Hi, this is Imagination, and welcome to the Ethical Asshole. I am your host, the Salty Bitch. I was talking to my friend about this earlier today. We were talking about, is there a God? And I was explaining to him how, and this gets really fascinating. When I was studying physics, and you progress through the study and the science of physics, everyone, whether or not you've studied physics, is tuned into an ethical stage of physics. Every one of us. Every one of you. If you are a human being, if you are alive, if you are not alive, if you matter, that's a physics joke, then you are absolutely in a stage of physics. And when I progressed through my stage of physics, and I started to track all of the changes of the human mind, one of the things that I noticed was a pattern emerge. There were three patterns, three subjects, three concepts that just kept cycling over, and the same concepts. And those concepts were agnostic, atheist, and religious. And what I noticed was when I started off, I was agnostic. And then I was religious. And then I was an atheist. And then I was agnostic again. And then I was religious again. And then I was an atheist again. Then I was religious again. Then I was agnostic again. Then I was religious again. And I noticed that everybody who was in the second ethical perspective was religious. Everyone. Everyone who was in the third ethical perspective was atheist. Everyone who is in the sixth ethical perspective is religious. The fifth ethical perspectives were split down the middle. Some of them were agnostic, some of them were atheist. But what I did notice was this. If you move, you change. That's what I noticed, is if you move, you change. So everyone in the second ethical perspective is a religious ethical perspective. And the sixth ethical perspective is a religious ethical perspective. The third and the fifth ethical perspectives are the atheist ethical perspectives. Sometimes. The third, definitely, always. The fifth, sometimes. But what did change that was consistent is that you did change. That was the constant. Not the God. You're going to change. And if you don't, you're not growing. I went through over 48 ethical shifts. 48. 48 times I changed my mind. 48 times. Right now, today, I am, and I don't know, I am an agnostic in this perspective. The last perspective, I absolutely was religious. Now I'm back to, I don't know. The next one is going to be an atheist. And then after that, I'm going to go back to being religious again, because that's the pattern. So if you're not changing your opinion, you're not growing. It's not really asking the question or answering the question, is God real? Depends on what perspective you're in. The bigger problem is, are you growing? Because if you still believe in a God and you've believed in a God and you are still 40 years and you've still believed in it, it means you haven't grown in 40 years. That's a bigger concern, because God, if there is a God, that thing, that person, that it, either isn't going to give a fuck, because if it is real, then it's not going to give a shit whether or not you believe in it. Or it's not real and this whole thing is moot. It depends really on which perspective you are at. I really don't know currently at this perspective. But I was more intrigued over the fact that every one of us changed perspectives and thus altered our belief on whether or not there was or was not a God. So I was watching this one YouTube video where this guy changed his mind after 40 years. And he's like, oh, I changed my mind. I do believe in God. And I went, oh, he finally shifted a perspective. So while everyone is suddenly swooping up this as evidence that there is a God, I'm going, oh, that just proved he finally grew his fucking ass out of his old habits of thinking. There's a lot of things like that where it's on that 3-bit rotation over and over again. A lot of stuff like that. A lot of stuff like that. And I noticed that it's the same rotation on 3. We indulge on A, we indulge on B, and then we integrate over and over again. We indulge on debauchery, we indulge on righteousness, and then we integrate. We indulge on the next indulgence of righteousness. We indulge on the next debaucherous, and then we integrate. That's how we learn. That's learning. That is learning. It's the formula. You get to a point where you just don't give a shit because it just doesn't fucking matter. You believing in that God doesn't change anything. But your belief in that God isn't constant either. There's a lot to say about mathematics and constants. So probably when next I shift perspective again, or, well, I don't shift perspectives anymore. I have perspective expansions. So next time I have my next perspective expansion, I will have new material that comes into my perspective that will alter my belief or my perspective of whether or not there is a God again. And then I will probably come back and report on this again. But it's going to change again because I don't sit still. Neither should you. Because that's when death happens. You're either slowly dying or you're growing. Because that's the way logical sequence does. That's life. You're either going that way or that way. So, just food for thought.